Hi there. So I'm doing a little update on one of the questions that I responded to in the 20 questions with Magenta Pixie video. So one of the questions was asked of me, will Donald Trump be impeached? My reply was, the chances of this happening is so low in probability that I cannot see this manifesting in any timeline. Therefore, because it's such a low probability, I'm going to say no. But this morning, my husband woke me up and said, Donald Trump has been impeached. And I thought, oh, how on earth did that happen? When I looked, I mean, it was a quick fire 20 questions, and I did not go deeply into these responses, but I still looked at that probability field, and literally the chances of this occurring were so low, and still are, that I simply could not see this happening. So I was actually baffled, and I said to my husband, are you sure that this is right? Is this some kind of joke? And he said, no, it's all over the news. He's been impeached. So I've had a look into this situation, the impeachment, and I want to explain what was going on in my head, as in my interpretation of impeachment when I looked at that probability field. As I said, it was a quick fire 20 questions. I wasn't going deeply, but what was in my head and the way that I interpret impeachment was what I was looking at. I wasn't looking at the interpretation of impeachment itself. I was looking at my interpretation of it and what the probability of that was. So I presumed, and my interpretation of impeachment was, that impeachment means there's a tribunal of some kind, and a vote or a decision is made regarding something that this president has done that deems them unfit to be president, therefore they would be removed from office. So that is what I thought impeachment meant, and obviously it does mean that. So when I was asked the question, will Donald Trump be impeached? My interpretation is impeachment equals removal from office. So when I'm looking at the probability field, I am looking at an impeachment, which means removal from office. That's what I was looking at. And the probabilities for that were so low, I actually said, no, I can't see this happening in any timeline. I'm actually standing by what I said, and I will explain what I mean by this. I now realize that impeachment is actually a twofold process. Firstly, this goes before Congress, and then this goes to the Senate afterwards for further discussion and further judgment or decision. So when my husband told me this morning, I was looking at the energy. Okay, Donald Trump's been impeached, but I'm not seeing it because I was looking for removal from office in my mind. And what I did see regarding this impeachment was nothing. Flat. No ripple in energy. No substance behind this supposed impeachment, which is why I said to my husband, is this some kind of joke? I now know that the impeachment decision from Congress is only the first step to this process. So while technically he's been impeached on paper, actual removal of office would occur once this has gone before the Senate. And I didn't know this procedure. Believe it or not, I'm not really that into politics. I mean, I know that sounds laughable as I probably talk about politics so much, but it isn't politics that I am talking about. It's energy fields, it's probability, it's the reading of energy and the delivery to others of my perspective, my journey, my teachings, and how that can assist you and trigger you. That's where I am. This isn't really about politics. However, if you are an energy reader right now, specific to our ascension process, it's going to be very difficult for you to look at that ascension timeline and what is going on this planet without hugely seeing the political world, because politics is kind of the way it's played out, the way the energies are played out in this dimension is through the political system, because that's where the control structure has come in from. Yes, it uses other structures, but massively political. Anyway, I digress there. So what I am looking at here is this impeachment. We've got a saying here in the UK, and that saying is, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. Now that's the statement that I would make regarding this impeachment. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. Why? Well, there's no substance there, as I said. There's no ripple, there's no change, there's no effect. It's almost as though there's this this false presentation of something dreadful that's all just a fairy story, or you know, without doing injustice to the fairy kingdom, a false narrative. Yes, there's an impeachment on paper, but it doesn't follow in its action. That's what I'm seeing. So looking at the probability fields, what I feel will occur is Donald Trump will go before the Senate, and they will find that these allegations or charges or whatever it was that made Congress choose to impeach, the Senate will find that there's no substance there. So there will be an acquittal, if you like. Now, what we are looking at here is the Congress party is predominantly Democratic individuals, and a very large number of those individuals are either cabal members or are controlled by the cabal system, and some know this and are okay with it, and some don't even know and believe in the cabal system, but they're still controlled by it. So in that Democratic Party, the majority are in that, and obviously we have some of that within the Republican Party as well. But what's occurring with the Republican Party and with some individuals that were Democrat and have switched is that the everyday person who builds their reality on fairness and integrity and democracy, they have been seeing over the last few months, and certainly over the last couple of years since Donald Trump was elected, they have been seeing a lack of integrity, a lack of democracy, a lack of fairness. And what they are seeing is political tactics used by the Democratic Party that are, well, really unfair, really below the belt, really not a good way to be when you are running a country or trying to run a country. Now, obviously, the Starseeds, the aware ones, know that this is way beyond politics. There's far more behind politics, but there are a lot of people who don't see the overall control system and the ascension timeline. What they're saying is the political structure. So they are seeing. They didn't realize how far the Democrats would go in their undesirable and unfair and corrupt movements. They didn't realize how far they would go. But that's because the Democratic Party, as I said, made up mostly of the cabal Illuminati structure, have not ever really had a reason to show to the world their corruption. It's all been done behind doors because they've not been challenged in the way that they've been challenged since Donald Trump took the presidency. So what I'm saying here is that there are people who were Democratic, either actually in the party, but mostly people who supported the party, that are now leaning towards a Republican viewpoint. And some of these people may not even like Donald Trump himself, but they're still not voting or wanting to support the Democratic Party because they're seeing the corruption. So what they're seeing here is that there's no substance within this impeachment, and it's a political tactic because there is no Democratic candidate for the presidency that that the Democratic Party feel can stand against Trump and win against Trump in the 2020 election. So it's a political move in order to get rid of Trump now, because they know once he's elected again, you know, he's well in, you know, he's like unmovable. That's what the people are seeing when they don't see beyond that political structure. All they see is politics, and they're thinking, gosh, the Democrats are playing a dirty game here. And it's surprising them, and they're sort of taking a step back and reevaluating their political views, because they vote Democratic because they want democracy, and Democratic stands for democracy, but they're seeing now that that's not the case, that it's not a democracy, it's a dirty game. So this is a group of individuals that feel this way. Obviously, there are others that are very pleased about this impeachment and, you know, are feeling that it's justified, and they do believe that Donald Trump will be removed from office. So I'm just embellishing on that question that was asked to me: will Donald Trump be impeached? My reply was no, because the probability fields are simply not showing that I can see. Now, if Donald Trump does get removed from office due to this impeachment, I will be absolutely shocked, because I just don't see it in the fields. I can't feel it in the fields. What I see in the most probable timeline, and in other timelines next to that probable one that are not so probable, but it's still there in those two, is that Donald Trump is acquitted, and this impeachment is meaningless, basically. There's no substance there. It's meaningless. What I would say to those who are Trump supporters, or really who I'm talking to, are the starseeds that are aware of the cabal, Illuminati, inverted matrix, and the ascension timeline, and the starseed indigo revolution. The individuals aware of that structure. What I would say is, don't worry. What I see here is this impeachment, just as I said, being meaningless, an acquittal being given, and then looking forward, the most probable timeline is that Donald Trump is re-elected in 2020. So that's my take on this. When I look at the energy fields, obviously everything is open to change, but I would say that is the most likely scenario for now. So I'm clarifying the question, clarifying to you what was in my mind, what was my interpretation of what impeachment meant. I thought impeachment meant removal from office. I didn't realize you could be impeached and not be removed from office. And as I said, I'm not really political. It's not really my thing. It's just come to me because it's so very intrinsic with the ascension experience and everything that's happening on Earth, the whole shift from one dimension into this higher octave, the next dimension, the new world. So that's my take on the impeachment situation, and clarifying further that question that I have already responded to. I'm now going to switch into another quite predominant and important political situation, and that's here in the UK. We have a similar thing going on in a different way, and that is Brexit. So what I'm looking at here now is the probability of a soft Brexit versus a hard Brexit. Before the election of the Conservative Party and Boris Johnson, before he was elected, what I was seeing there as the most probable timeline is this desire, this energetic that wants Brexit, as in independence, sovereignty, removal from the European Union structure, but the blocks to that in the form of a kind of a teasing and a dashing of one's hopes in the form of punishment to the United Kingdom. So it was very much the energy of, you're the UK, you've voted to leave the EU, we're not having that. we are going to punish you for voting. We're not going to give you your Brexit, and we are going to punish you for voting, making it look like Brexit's the most dreadful thing and everyone regrets their decision. And oh dear, we shouldn't have voted for Brexit. Please, Mr. Big EU, we're very sorry. Can we stay with you? That kind of thing. And that's the kind of energy that was there in its predominant sense, with this desire for sovereignty still there, being kind of blocked. What I will say is that the blocking of this was not easy for the service to self structures, cabal, Illuminati structures to do, because with every step that they take, there is a service to others, energy sort of stepping back in front again. So that was the predominant energy, as in Brexit would just be delayed, 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 raise everyone's hopes, dash them again, punishing the naughty people from the UK. That was the kind of energy. But that's changed now. Since the Conservative Party have been elected with Boris Johnson as the leader, and I'm not going to go into Boris Johnson as a person. He, you know, a lot of people are saying he's our UK version of Trump. He's our English Trump. Yeah, in a way I can understand that, but he's very different. But that's not the point. The issue is now that for some reason, the Brexit situation has been pushed into a corner now, because this new election vote in the UK was basically a second referendum wrapped up within an election. So the chances now of Brexit occurring are greater than they were. Now, this is not a huge issue in the probability fields. When I say huge issue, I mean this is not a huge definite in the probability fields. So like with Donald Trump, chances of him being removed from office due to impeachment are so low, you know, they could even be seen as zero. They're just so low. That's not the case with Brexit. Brexit is more it's still difficult to call it, I would say. Timelines are not set on this yet, but the chances of Brexit occurring are much greater than they were before Boris Johnson was elected as the Prime Minister. Now, if Brexit occurs, will it be a soft Brexit or a hard Brexit? Now, what the cabal service to self structures would go for, because delaying Brexit now is kind of, they've been pushed into a corner. And while they would attempt to still have delay tactics, it's just not working in the way that it was now since Boris Johnson was elected. And there are many reasons for that. And that's another whole sort of deep layer of uncovering and looking at Boris Johnson and why he feels the way he does. And it's kind of irrelevant, really, looking at him as a person and his input into this. What I'm looking at here is whether Brexit will occur, and if so, how. So the cabal would go for now the softer Brexit, meaning you leave the EU, but you're still tied into their rules to a certain extent. You have no say, and it means you are a sort of a cut-off country in all ways, an emasculated country, if you're looking at the country as a masculine presentation, with the feminine unable to move forward. That's what a soft Brexit would mean. It would mean you're stuck in a limbo, can't go one way or the other. You think you've got Brexit, but you haven't really, but neither are you in the EU either. So you're kind of adrift and at sea. And that is kind of what they would want. However, the hard Brexit, which so many people in the UK don't want because they feel that it would be disastrous for our economy and our trade. And whilst there would be some issues at first, ultimately the hard Brexit, and there are those that do want it, ultimately the hard Brexit, looking at the energy fields, and as I said, I'm not political, but I'm just looking at where the country is going. A hard Brexit is the best step for the UK at this point. It is the way forward in alignment with the ascension timeline. The chances of it occurring are greater than before. At this point, I would say the probabilities, if I had to hazard a guess, and it is really different because it's changing every day, probably above 50-50. I would say, you know, 55-45, 60-40 in favour of a hard Brexit, but that's marginal at the moment. So the probability could swing either way. Things change all the time, but that probability wasn't even there before Boris Johnson was elected. It was, you know, the delay tactic was the number one probability. Hard Brexit just wasn't, the possibility of that wasn't even getting through. It has now. So now we need to look again, as we move forward in the next few weeks, as to where we are with that. And we'll know more as we move into the new year. So my guess is that that probability will increase. And I can't say definitely that we will have a hard Brexit. I think staying as we are is probably better than a soft Brexit, because that isn't really Brexit. Hard Brexit is what we need as a country. And looking at the way the energies are moving with the US, as in, it looks like chaos to everyone. Everyone's confused. No one knows what's going on apart from the few. But really, it's in alignment with the ascension timeline, given that we have been a controlled planet. It's not in alignment with an ascension timeline on a planet that hasn't been controlled. But this is very much in alignment with the ascension timeline within a planet that's been controlled, and that control is now diminishing and well, is not there in the way that it was. Looking at how the US is going, I would say the UK, which is the same energy, ultimately, this is Earth, would mirror this. And so if I had to hazard a guess here, and I said this isn't a prediction because it is very difficult to predict, but if I had to hazard a guess here, I would say we would get our hard Brexit. Looking at how things are, but that is a less of a probability than the Trump being impeached and removed from office. Another thing I noticed that is quite interesting, actually, which I will add, and it's to do with the inverted matrix system and religion. Religion being one of the other structures that's been hijacked as part of the black box program, inverted matrix system. And that's when you go into a church and you worship or give praise, whilst your heart may be open and in service and in love, much of that energy is taken in to feed the inverted matrix. Without going into what that means and all the metaphors there, that's not the issue. I'm looking at what's occurring here. Now, unless you're familiar with the inverted matrix and the black box program, the feeding, the siphoning of emotions from innocent humanity, unless you are familiar with what I'm talking about, you probably will think I'm talking nonsense. So go back, have a look at some of my previous videos, or go and do some research elsewhere, read my books, read other people's books. There's a lot of information out there about this. What I will say to those who are aware of this structure is you will be aware that in churches, when there is a worship type praise, specifically involving children, that energetic is given to the inverted matrix to feed it and create the power structure to be stronger. So it's a hijacking of the genuine heart-opening innocence and purity of the people, specifically to the children. So when you go into a church and you perhaps this time of year at Christmas might watch the children singing carols, you'll be sitting there in a third dimensional analysis thinking, oh, aren't they beautiful, the children singing carols, it's so lovely and so heart-opening and so warming and so nice, and you may not realize that that's part of the hijacking. Now, I'm not saying every single child is being hijacked or has been hijacked, but predominantly that worship energy, that praise coming from the innocent is hijacked. It's taken to feed the inverted matrix. And the reason why is very, very deep, and it is in my books, and I will be writing about this more, and there's more information to come about this from the 9 that I don't even know myself. But what I'm getting at here is that there has been a change. I went to see my granddaughter and my grandson sing yesterday in church, their carol service. And I was amazed to see, and I watch them every year. This year, it was different. I was amazed to see that this star-seeded group of children, and we're looking at children around the ages of 5 to about 9 or 10, so sort of between 5 and 10. What was amazing is that energy was not going into that inverted matrix. It wasn't being siphoned. It was actually going into the service to others field. And I sat there watching, I thought, wow, I can see where the energy is going. And it's not being hijacked. It's not being siphoned. It's not being taken. It's not feeding the inverted matrix system. Why? And this is because of the star seeds. The fact that the star seed consciousness is controlling the timelines for Earth. This is the breakdown of the inverted matrix system. If you are sensitive, if you are empathic and aware, you will be feeling this energy. And with this solstice, Christmas, crystal stargate, we have this energy where everything is coming to fruition in its manifestation sense of everything that we have known. It's kind of there within that portal. And to add to that, the 9 have come forward with information about the day after Christmas. We call that day Boxing Day here in the UK. So that's the 26th of December, which is an eclipse. The 9 are calling this the flame eclipse portal. They've brought through the information, and that video will be up ASAP. But linking to that, the information in that video, if you look behind me, you will see a little pink squashy teddy bear. It's actually called a squishmallow, and I fell in love with him when I saw him in the shop and bought him. And he's got a crown on his head, and I've put that there deliberately for this video because the crowning is the star seeds coming into the true royal code, the true awareness of the royalty that they are, as in the code within. It's really coming into manifestation in this crystal stargate period, and then flipping into this different but adjoining energy with the eclipse, which is all in the video, as to how different that energy is and how they are both being keyed into by the star seeds. So the crowning is the anointing. It is a mass initiation. Now, this has occurred before. It's kind of like a cyclical cycle anointing mass initiation period all around the 2012 energy. Since the 21st of December 2012, this is occurring again at this solstice, Christmas, into this eclipse, this flame eclipse. So that's why my squishmallow is wearing a crown, and the symbol of the crown is a symbol that we take back because it's been hijacked by those that choose to emulate true universal galactic source frequency within the third dimension by doing it themselves without moving into an alignment with universal cosmic structure and allowing that to happen in flow, in synchronicity. They take that frequency and create the manifestation that they choose. And one of the ways they've done that is through the royal family, as in we are royal. We hold the code, we hold the symbologies, the pineal gland, the crown chakra activation. We have the anointing, we have the initiation, but they've created it as a third dimensional false copy of the true flow. And through doing that and creating a mass consciousness that feeds into that, they've been able to prevent the true alignment with true flow. And that has changed. So we're looking at 3 subjects here that are all interrelated. The impeachment situation with Trump in the US, the hard Brexit situation, Boris Johnson, etc. in the UK, and then the feeding into the inverted matrix system from the purity of the child, the innocent one within the religious structure, and then into the anointing, the true royalty, the true connection with that field and with that code, the receiving of that mass initiation. They may seem like different subjects, but they're all intertwined. They are all part of one. And when you're in that unity, you can feel all of this as one. When you're feeling this as separate and you're like, well, that doesn't mean this and that means that, and that's got nothing to do with this, that's okay. But that is a separation consciousness, and it's okay to have that. We need to understand that. But this ascension timeline is about moving into the unified experience, the unified consciousness. Now, what the 9 have to say about the energy that is being keyed into by the starseeds of both the flame eclipse and the crystal stargate, and they're not one portal. These are 2 separate portals right next to each other and giving off different energetics. What the 9 have to say about that and how that affects us is actually really interesting. That video will be uploaded shortly and I hope you enjoy it. Anyway, just want to wish you once again a really wonderful solstice, Christmas, New Year, eclipse, all of it. And thank you again for listening to me chatting away, and love you all, and I will be back soon. Bye.
In this transmission from the white-winged collective consciousness of 9, I, Magenta Pixie, bring forward information specific to utilising the rose gold flame as antidote to 5G, EMFs, chemicals, chemtrails, and similar. The presented template utilises the Schumann resonance, and the technique is alchemical unification. In this book, the 9 discuss synchronicity, discernment skills, and understanding of discordance and disharmony within truth and lightworker communities. They present a workable model of expression, assisting the spiritual explorer in creating a necessary toolkit. This allows the individual to construct a shield, bringing safety, harmony, expansion, and cohesive sovereignty into their own personal reality and their matrix field. I am pleased to present my new short book, The Black Box Program and the Rose Gold Flame as Antidote.